Good evening. This is Sunday evening, and I'd like to talk to everybody this week be about one of my topics that is maybe one of my favorite in this whole course, and one that I've been intimately involved with for many, many years, going all the way back to when I was a student athlete back in the 1970s to just a few years ago when I retired as a coach at the college level in 2019, and all the other roles I've had that have touched on it, both as an educator, a member of university leadership team. I've been on search committees for coaches and athletic directors. I've had some great experiences in college athletics. And in fact, I really even wrote a lot of my doctoral work around the subject of college athletics. So it's something that I think I have a little bit of knowledge about, and it's very interesting to me when we do this unit and sort of sit back and see what people's reactions are when we ask those two questions about what are the purposes and issues in sport and college sport, and then the other about paying student athletes, which is a very interesting issue. I'm going to spend my time this evening on the first question: what's the purpose and what really goes on, and just to try to clarify some things, because I think people were generally very good about what they thought about it. You could tell a lot of thought went into it. Um, I was a little surprised, frankly, at the number of people who really thought about the purpose of sport, didn't just go out and say, oh, they make a lot of money for the colleges, because that's really not true. And consider what the sport programs are all about. What are we doing? Are we looking at educational components? Are we looking at components for developing the whole person? Are we teaching a lot of skills? Are we providing outlets for people to get to college that they might not ever have? The answer to all that is yes, in varying degrees. The idea of whether colleges are using sport to make money, which is a very popular conception, and one I think that is held by most sports fans because they have a limited look at the universe of college sport. The answer is, in my opinion, a classic economist slash consultant answer of it depends on what do you mean by making money for the college. And in that sense, I'm going to define it in two different ways. Generally, if we looked at it from an accountant's point of view, whether the athletic program generated enough revenue to pay all its bills essentially within that program and give money back to the college in form of excess revenue, the answer is no. It is extremely rare. It doesn't happen, and it happens on a tiny percentage basis. And I'll get to those numbers in a minute. If you want to talk about the more important concept of does it develop value in one way, shape, or form for the college, the answer generally is yes, it does, and creates a lot of economic benefit in terms of raising the profile of an institution, enhancing, or in some cases detracting from the profile of an institution, of making it an attractive a target for students, not just student athletes, but general students to come to. So as a marketing and branding and reputation building tool, the answer is yes. The problem is that's extremely hard to quantify. And I think you'll see as we look at some of the numbers and as I talk about them, that you'll come to understand this a little bit more. All right. So let's just going to concentrate on two areas tonight. All right. And please bear with me. This could take another 10 or 15 minutes, but I think it's important that we do. I'm going to concentrate on Division One FBS, right? Football Bowl Subdivision, the top division in college football and in college sport for most purposes. And then I'm going to spend some time on Division Two. And we're going to use our own school here, Post, as a typical Division II member to talk about what goes on. So let's look at it. Division I FBS, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Power Five conferences, the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, Big Ten, and what am I missing? I am missing somebody, am I not? So anyhow, those conferences, Big 12, excuse me. Those conferences, those are the big boys, so to speak. They have massive athletic budgets, generally ranging some in the top quarter of that work. They're anywhere. We took the top quarter of that group of public institutions in that group. Top 27 schools. Okay, their athletic budgets range from $125 million to $215 million. So generally, when you see numbers like that, one of the first things is make sure you know what number you're reading or hearing about. Are you hearing about revenue, meaning the entire budget? What is the value coming into these programs, and how is it being acquired? And expenses, right? How is it being expensed? Then profit. And profit being, this is the most basic definition of profit, right? Well, even at that level, sad to say, most of those programs, what they do is they generate enough revenue to pay for themselves. And that's about it. They really don't give much back to their institutions at all. They, in fact, their biggest benefit to the institution on a straight up accounting way of looking at it is they don't require any additional support from the university to operate. So if I were to look at the numbers for that, and I have them in front of me, for that group of schools in 2020, the last year we have the full accounting, those schools, on average, maybe got 1% of their income, mind you, from the institution. And that's still coming from the institution to subsidize the athletic program. Where did they get the rest of their money? Well, the big bulk of it comes from conference distributions. This is where the TV money comes, not from the NCAA. It comes from the conferences. That's why you see all this competition amongst the conferences. They have the SEC network. Texas used to have its own, the Longhorn network, the ACC network, the broadcast contracts with the big TV operations. This is where the money comes from. And they get distributed to the schools in those conferences. That's about 40% of the income for these schools. The other big chunk comes from tickets. Tickets are only about 23%. Okay? So between the conference distributions, the TV money, the postseason money, which, by the way, does not go through the NCAA at all, college football, CFP, College Football Playoff, is not an NCAA institution. The individual bowl games are not NCAA institutions. The only thing the NCAA does is certify teams' eligibility to play in those events, but no money from that goes through the NCAA. And a lot of the money comes from the men's Division I basketball tournament, which pretty much funds the entire NCAA. Okay. If I add up that and the ticket sales, I've got about 60% of the revenue. The rest of it comes from about 9 or 10% comes from advertising and corporate sponsorships. 24% of it comes from donations, donors, boosters. This is where the money comes from. And as you can see, it's a pretty tight distribution, everything, but you can see what happens. When that's your sources of money, what are you going to do? How are you going to manage your business, and how are you going to look at it? You're going to look at being attractive to those places of revenue generation, like donors, like ticket buyers, like TV watchers, like TV networks. And what do they like? Good competitive teams that win. Essentially, minor league football. That's what you're getting there. That drives the rest of the programs. Now, the minute you go down, let's just say, I'm going to skip the second quartile because it looks a lot like that first quartile I just described. If I go to the third quartile, right, now we're talking about teams from maybe the 55th, 60th team down in that 127, I believe, FBS schools. So that bottom half, they look completely different. By the time you get down there, guess where they're getting their money? That 41% that came from TV and bowls and everything like that came from in the big boys. In these other schools, which are often members of the same conferences, The numbers are 41% comes from institutional and government support. Yes, they're getting subsidized. They're getting the biggest chunk of their money straight out of the institution. And where does that come from? It comes from tuition, comes from student fees. In the cases of state universities, which most of these schools are, it comes from taxpayer support, all to prop up the athletic program. Because generally, that athletic program is a money loser in the accounting sense. Is it a money generator? That's left open to how you define the economic benefits that are coming in from what I talked about earlier. The branding, right? The name recognition, all of that stuff, okay? So this idea that big-time college sports is a moneymaker is a matter of interpretation, a matter of usage, and like as I just said, in the accounting sense, it's not really true. It's not really the picture of the way things happen. And to actually build on that a little bit, I'd like to go another step. Let me find my mouse here. Another step on it. What do these schools do with that money? Well, where's the money go? At that top group, the interesting thing is, in this case, from the revenues looking different, the expenses look pretty much the same, percentage-wise. So it doesn't matter whether you're doing you're playing at Alabama or say UAB for another one, Alabama Birmingham, which is going to be in that lower group. The percentage by percentage basis of the numbers is going to pretty much look the same. And most of the biggest expense for those institutions generally is facilities and equipment, about 25%. Next biggest expense, coaching compensation. And here's a shocker for a lot of people. Coaching compensation is just about equal to, or in most cases, a little more than the percentage that's available for scholarships. That sometimes doesn't go well and sit with a lot of people. And for those of you who spoke of all the noble intents of college athletics, I think maybe that's a little bit of an eye-opener, and you want to sit back and look at that. It is definitely quite a bit more. In fact, if you add in the support staff and all that, at that top quarter of FBS, there's 39% goes to coaches' compensation and support and administrative compensation. 11% goes to scholarships. Okay? 11% goes to scholarships. So you say, oh God, that's unfair. That's unfair. These student athletes are paying and they're preying on them and they're being abused for that. Well, really? Because what drives the rest of the revenue that sustains the athletic program, that means it doesn't need to have institutional support, like from the general student budget or from the legislature or something like that. It means these are the guys who win. These are the guys who we want to see on TV. These are the guys who the networks want. And that's what they look at. And that is a very interesting phenomenon. That's how it works. It's a very, very misunderstood model because most people try to think of college sports at that upper level as a business. And they think more of traditional businesses. And it doesn't work that way. So keep that in mind as you're going forth with some of these other things. Now, the other side of the argument that I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about tonight is Division II as a good example. And Post is a Division II school. So why does Post have an athletic program, you might say? You know, all due respect to one of your classmates who I know is a soccer player, said, you know, Post is known for its soccer program. Within the Northeast, Division II, maybe not outside of Waterbury. Sorry, but I'm really close to that program. I'm one of your biggest supporters. I know what's going on, all right? Another comment. We have a football player from Post in here who made the honest comment. Post established Division II football to make money. Well, in what sense? Okay, the answer to that is yes, they did. And changed the type of football program we had to make money. And you're saying, no, this is all starting to sound pretty cynical and pretty outrageous, but it's not at all. Post, as in many Division II and III schools, unless you're one of the elite Division III schools, I'm academically elite, Post is what I would call a tuition-driven university. We thrive, survive, and live by our ability to generate tuition revenue. And here's where you can really see a balance be something I talked about early with the Division I schools, but now with a completely different funding model, right? Post as an online school is pretty big. We've got about 15,000 students. On campus, we've got about not quite 800, last I knew, right? Of those 800, over 400 are student athletes. We have more student athletes at Post than many Division I schools do. But why do we have them? We have them to actually help fund and keep the campus alive and give us an anchor for our athletic programs and an anchor for the university as a whole. To quote somebody who's very, very high up in the administration, and when I first spoke to them about this a few years ago, the answer was, I was looking at this and I found out that everybody I talked to, what it means is if I don't have an athletic program, if we don't have an athletic program, we're an online school. And he said that kind of with a little, sniff at his nose. I said, but if we have an athletic program, then the world sees us as a real school. Well, that's very, very true. So by adding Division I football and replacing the old sprint program, we've not only raised our profile in the athletic world, we raised the number of recruits that we will get. Division II is predicated on not full scholarships, but partial scholarships. So the more student athletes we have at Post, the more tuition revenue we generate. It's that simple. And it is not cynical. We're using a very valuable tool in the education of people in order to be a valuable tool in the support of the university's business model. And the campus is not only the anchor of it's the academic home of all the programs, and the campus is the anchor of the university as a whole. So you can look at it as those less than 1,000 people in Waterbury really supporting it and providing that word, I'll use it again, the anchor for those 15,000 online. So it's very important things, and it's very, very typical of Division II schools, of tuition-driven institutions. So when you saw that comment and a couple of the discussions, don't take that cynically, take that in a very positive way. It's using a very positive program for a very positive result. So what I'm really trying to do tonight is actually direct you to just open up what you think. Again, don't think, again, I've said it 100 times. If you've watched my videos, don't go with what you think you know. Don't go with what the sports page tells you. Don't look at it that way, but go and find out what the real truth is, what the real numbers are. And the two places I'm going to direct you to, and I will actually post them for you, is one called the Knight Commission, Knight, on college sports. And that's where I was getting the numbers I was talking about tonight. The Knight Commission is very, very authoritative. And another place to look at is the NCAA itself, which has a page called Where Does the Money Go? Okay, one valuable to look at. I've already provided for you in Unit 6 a link to what are called the EADA reports, okay? Those are from the Federal Department of Education, and they require financial disclosure from every college athletic program, and that's where we get them. So again, more institutional information. You can find out information about any college you want to know about. But the thing is, this idea that college athletics are this great big money machine is basically a misconception. Okay? It is a misconception that's held by millions and millions of sports fans, and it really clouds how they look at things. That being said, thank you for indulging me in the time, because this is a message I really want to get across to you. And if anybody has any questions about this, because it's a very important issue, I wish you would get in touch with me. Thank you again, and we'll keep going. Look forward to Unit 7. Thank you.